I recently reviewed the Retroid Pocket 5, and I absolutely love this thing. For the price of around $220, it is a very powerful device for retro emulation. The point is, this thing is awesome and well worth it. Well, a couple months after releasing the Retroid Pocket 5, Retroid released the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, which was a successor to the original Retroid Pocket Flip, which apparently was not so great, but from what I hear and from my testing so far, I can tell you the Retroid Pocket Flip 2 is pretty nice. And that shouldn't really be a surprise considering how good the Retroid Pocket 5 is. This is essentially a Retroid Pocket 5 in a clamshell form factor. You've got the same internals, the same beautiful AMOLED screen, and it just has a lot of great stuff to offer that the Retroid Pocket 5 has. Sort of just depends on which one you prefer. But this isn't about the Retroid Pocket 5, this is about the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, and I mean, just look at that. Just look at that thing. Look at it. Full disclosure, this was sent to me by WhatGeek.com. Thank you to WhatGeek. It does not affect my opinion in any way. In fact, if you've seen the Retroid Pocket 5 video I've done, you know that I like that. I mean, I just started the video saying that I did, and that this is essentially the same thing, but different. So anyway, you can use the link in the description to pick this up from WhatGeek, and I will have a little discount code in the description as well. So given that I reviewed the Retroid Pocket 5 not too long ago, and this is very similar, I want to try to avoid retreading a lot of the same ground that I did with the Retroid Pocket 5. If you want to, you can check out that first video if you wanted to get any other context that maybe I don't cover in this video. I mainly want to highlight the differences of what sets the Flip 2 apart and just show off some games, because that's the most important part with these things is playing games, right? This thing's got a Snapdragon 865 CPU, an Adreno 650 GPU, 8GB of LPDDR4X RAM, 128GB of internal storage, as well as an SD card slot in case you want to expand that. It runs on Android 13, and it's got a beautiful 5.5-inch 1080p AMOLED display. It's got Hall effect thumbsticks, analog triggers, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.1, and a 5000 mAh battery. This thing's got it all. What it does not have is any games out of the box, so just be prepared for that. If you're going to pick one of these up, you are going to want to supply your own ROMs from your own ROM library. If you're expecting this to be like most of the handhelds I review on this channel that come with an SD card full of games, that is not the case with Retroid devices. So here it is, this is the clamshell design. At the top we've got our shoulder buttons and our analog triggers as well as a heat vent. Along the right we've got a volume rocker. At the bottom we've got our SD card slot, a USB-C port, and a headphone jack. And along the corner there we've got a little space for a lanyard. Nothing on the right side, but on the back we've got the Retroid Pocket logo as well as a heat vent for the fan there. Then once we open it up we've got that screen of course, a D-pad and face buttons which are very much similar if not the same as the D-pad and face buttons on the Retroid Pocket 5. Two thumbsticks that are a little bit different than the ones on the Retroid Pocket 5, and they do have RGB lighting which you can turn on or off or even customize the colors to your liking. You've got start, select, home, and the power button as well. And two front-facing speakers. So initial impressions right off the bat just holding this thing in hand is that I find this to be way more comfortable to use for longer sessions than I do the Retroid Pocket 5. That has a lot to do with the positioning of the thumbsticks and the D-pad and face buttons being in different positions. The face buttons being up higher and closer to the edge of the device on the Retroid Pocket 5, I found it a little bit uncomfortable to play for longer sessions because my hand was kind of cramped, kind of like in this like weird like claw motion. There wasn't enough room for my hand to get in a comfortable position. That's not the case here. For retro games where the D-pad and the face buttons are, it might look like my thumbs are stretching to reach the buttons, but it doesn't feel like I'm stretching at all. It feels quite nice. And the thumbsticks are in a position to where it doesn't feel uncomfortable to play newer games moving around with the left thumbstick or aiming with the right thumbstick. One issue I'm personally encountering as well is with some older games, if I'm not really using the shoulder buttons, I will tend to rest my index finger on the back of the device, but I do notice that when I'm holding the device that way, the side of my index finger here will rub up against this little ridge along the back of the device, and after a while it kind of irritates the skin. I don't love it, so I guess I kind of have to get used to always keeping my fingers on the bumpers. The D-pad and buttons, they all feel great. I don't really have any complaints about them whatsoever, other than the fact that they're a little bit loud. And I find that to be the case with all of these Retroid devices I've tested out, including the Retroid Pocket Classic that I have here that I'm going to be reviewing as soon as I can. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Now the thumbsticks here are nice. They're a little bit different than they are on the Retroid Pocket 5. These are around the same size, but they've got these grippy textures along the edges, which I'm always a big fan of. And they are Hall effect thumbsticks as well, so if you want that, that's what you got here. I like how deeply recessed they are into the device, so you don't really lose any range of motion and you're still able to close the clamshell when you're not playing. It just, it works nicely and I think it's designed well. The hinge is quite nice, it's very smooth. It only opens pretty much all the way like that, and then you can just do this if you want to open a little bit more, but it doesn't have any like in-between space, so you pretty much just go from closed to all the way open, and it doesn't make any creaking sounds, it doesn't sound or feel like it's gonna break. It's a good hinge. The speakers seem to be bigger in size on the Flip 2 than they are on the 5. There are some times where they just sound a little bit harsh, a little bit too trebly. For the most part though, it does seem to sound just fine. Now I'm just going to show some gameplay while I kind of run through the performance of this thing. Again, this is going to be very similar if not identical to the performance on the Retroid Pocket 5, so just keep that in mind. I'm not going to show a whole lot of older systems. In fact, I wanted to cram this thing as full as I could with more intensive games, but just to kind of test it out and show you what it looks like, I did load up some Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance games on this thing. And with that OLED screen, colors absolutely pop and it looks amazing. For anyone who's not aware, OLED screens have such deep black colors because any black pixels are actually completely turned off. This not only makes the image really pop, but it also helps with battery life in theory. One of the advantages of such a dark OLED screen is that, say for example, I want to play Game Boy Advance games on this, GBA games run at a 2:3 aspect ratio, whereas this screen is a 16:9 aspect ratio, so GBA games are not going to take the full screen. By default, it's going to have black bars on the side, but because of the black screen and the black bezels, it actually blends in quite well to where you can't really see the black bars. It almost gives the illusion that the size of the screen is changing, adapting to the type of game you're playing, and it just looks really cool. That's something I sort of lost out on with my Retroid Pocket 5 because I have the white one, so given that the Flip 2 has these black bezels around the screen, I think gives this a little bit more of an advantage in this device's favor. Now obviously, older games are not really going to have any issues running on this thing. I mean, if you can run all the way up to PS1 on other weaker handhelds, they're going to run on here just fine. The real reason you want to drop so much money on something like this is for higher end emulation, and I'm able to easily run games at 3x resolution for GameCube, which brings it up to 1080p, and with PS2, I usually cap out at around 2x resolution. PS2, at least in my experience, is ever so slightly more difficult to run than GameCube. Even 3DS, which can be even more difficult to run, is able to run at 3x resolution, and you've got a touchscreen, so you can use the touchscreen for touch functions on the 3DS. If you swipe down from the top of the screen, this does have a performance toggle. For certain games, I do end up having to turn this on to high performance mode, and that is going to kick up the internal fan. When this device is in performance mode, the fan usually is on, but it's quiet. You really can't hear it at all unless you really listen for it. But when you switch to high performance mode, that fan is noticeably louder. But if you can run a stable frame rate and a higher resolution for certain games, I think it's worth it. If it really bothers you, I mean, you could always plug in headphones, or I mean, it is an Android device, so you can always use Bluetooth headphones if you want to. And I'm just kind of blown away with some of the things you can do with some of the games on this device. When you are first setting up, it'll give you different options for different emulation apps you can install. Personally, I don't recommend installing the version of Dolphin that it gives you, because it's not the latest version. I recommend just going onto the Dolphin website in the browser and downloading it directly from there. It's completely free, and it's going to be more up to date, which is going to make it easier to use things like cheats, some of which, for example, are as simple as enabling widescreen mode for certain games. You do not want to use the widescreen hack enhancements that are built into Dolphin. You want to use the cheats that are available for certain games to go into widescreen mode that way. And playing some Pokemon games on 3DS at 3x resolution just looks really nice and crisp. I mean, those Pokemon models look better than Switch game Pokemon models. With the cell shading and the shadows and everything, it just looks smoother than any Switch Pokemon game. It just looks a lot better. By the way, I am running all this through a front end called Emulation Station. If you watched my Retroid Pocket 5 video, you might remember that I did not care for Retroid's own built-in launcher. So I don't use that, I use Emulation Station. It just looks a lot better, I'm a lot more familiar with it, it's easier to use. So I recommend using something like that, although it does cost a little bit of money because you have to chip into their Patreon to get it. So if that's not for you, you can always download something like Daiji Show directly from the Google Play Store. And another nice thing about this being an Android handheld is it's an Android handheld. So there are plenty of games out there on the Google Play Store that you can download and use the controls for natively. One of my favorite games I always test out on these handhelds is Horizon Chase. It's free and it's just a fun, simple racing game that I like to test out on these things, and it looks especially great on these AMOLED displays. And you know what else? Vampire Survivors is absolutely free, and it doesn't even have any ads. You can just play that on here for free. Battery life has been pretty nice. It's pretty similar comparatively to the Retroid Pocket 5. I mean, it's got a 5000 mAh battery and it is an Android device, device with AMOLED, so depending on what games you're playing and if you're having to kick into performance mode or not, battery life could last for several hours. I couldn't give you an exact number because it's going to vary by game and performance and all that stuff. I've spent a few hours over the last couple of days testing out different games and high performance mode and closing the clamshell, leaving the device in sleep mode in between play sessions, and I would say the battery trickled down only about 50%. And the nice thing too with these Android devices that a lot of people don't really mention is that all you have to do is put it into sleep mode. You don't have to turn it off, and that battery will trickle down a little bit as time passes. So when you're ready, you can just open up the clamshell and continue playing. Anyway, I'm tired of rambling on. I've already recorded this video twice because I didn't like how the first one came out. So make sure you subscribed if you are new, and like this video if you did, dislike it if you didn't. Leave a comment telling me one way or the other, because you know what? I worked extra hard on this video, and I would really appreciate your support. You can do that all for absolutely free. And once again, you can purchase this in the description. It's not an affiliate link. I don't get anything if you were to purchase from the link in the description. I'm just sending you over to WhatGeek to check it out because they sent this to me to check it out. And again, I do have a coupon in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you watch another video here if you feel so inclined. And I am out of here.